I think with AI coaching and coaching applications like Sherlock, now capable of offering personalized development at scale, right? How do you see its role in complementing or challenging traditional leadership per se in unlocking the full potential of your people and the role which you play at Dentsu Merkel?
Well, I would argue that platforms like Sherlock aren't really challenging the traditional way that we coach. I would argue the way that we work now has already kind of challenged that. In other words, there was traditional coaching, which made, I think, a lot more sense when everyone was going into offices 5 days a week and when everyone had a lot of sort of observational time face to face.
Yeah.
As soon as so much of our world has gone to either hybrid work or virtual work, honestly, traditional coaching has been kind of like turned on its head. And so a lot of things that you used to be able to try to scale by doing really large in-person group meetings or being able to kind of observe someone who needs some coaching and then being able to do a pull aside and do some face-to-face in person, it doesn't happen anymore. I mean, the joke that I always kind of refer to is you don't actually like schedule a meeting to have a disagreement. You know what I'm saying? But those used to kind of happen organically when you were working together, and you would learn from those things, honestly, or you would observe people not handling it well. And so a lot of the sort of the organic way that I think sort of like instinctive coaching occurred, or, the actual sort of planned one-to-one professional coaching would occur, just doesn't happen the same way when everyone is so hybrid and so virtual. So I really look at a lot of platforms, things like Sherlock, things that actually can sort of provide scale and work, are basically designed to work for people who are not sitting in the same room together, as trying to kind of pull us a little bit closer to what we used to have when we were all sitting together.
Yeah, yeah. I resonate with those. Specifically, if I talk about employees at workplace, during my times of leading, teams at Sapient as well, one of the, feelings I always had was that some of the people would fear approaching their leaders or managers. Again, that old world of developing people. Now with AI coaching, how do you see that world, evolving? Again, just an offshoot of the similar question it asked.
Right. Well, I agree. Look, I mean, coaching, I think, has helped me in my career sort of understand how to interact with different kinds of personality types, how to deal with very challenging, sometimes high stress situations at work. But coaching doesn't scale. Coaching is a very sort of one-to-one thing traditionally. And what I've observed is that it tends to kind of almost like create like a class of people that a company deems worth investing in coaching, and then the vast majority of people who really don't get any of that at all. And so, the thing that I love about a lot of generative AI tools and conversational experiences is that it can start to democratize a lot of this stuff that used to just be kind of like a perk for the very, very senior exec class. What you touch on is also interesting, though, which is something that I didn't really think about originally, but I've kind of discovered. And it takes courage to kind of ask for help.
Yeah,
And it actually takes a little less courage, I think, to ask an app for help, I guess is the
absolutely.
way that I would put it. And so I think, especially when you start to think about millennials and Gen Z and their sort of like natural sort of digital fluency and willingness to interact with these experiences, frankly, they're way more comfortable with it than my generation, Gen X. I think that people are willing to open up and kind of like have some of those a little bit sort of like revealing conversations if they know that they're kind of doing it in a safe, private way with an experience, let's say conversational experience, maybe in more so than even if they were talking one-on-one in a private room with a professional coach.
Yeah, or a manager. I think that's an observation, or rather now data is telling us based on multiple clients we have rolled out Sherlock to. Numbers are talking. So, for example, just within 12 weeks, Sherlock clocked in around 14,000 minutes of coaching time, which on an average human would have taken ages to do. And I'm not saying it replaced that human, but yes, what we felt looking at the data was that given that 92% of them said they moved post a coaching conversation with Sherlock, which means they developed some trust, some transparency, which otherwise they probably might not have felt with their leaders or the managers. And I'm talking about average leaders and managers. I'm not talking about good and great leaders. And we all know both of them exist in the organization.
Yeah. I I also think a lot about not just sort of big sweeping changes in maybe how people run their work life, but actually micro sort of like changes that can occur. And so I think sometimes when you're sitting down with an actual person and or a manager or a coach, you know,
Yeah.
you're really kind of thinking like, I need to fundamentally change if I'm going to advance. I have to fundamentally kind of become a very different person. And the truth of it is, most people actually have a lot of what they need to be really successful. It's kind of about sanding off some of the edges and maybe being willing to listen a little bit longer. And so I actually think that some of these scaled applications for coaching can help people, especially with some of those micro interactions, right? To sort of recognize these smaller moments. It doesn't feel like I have to change my life and become a very different person. It can just be tips and tricks and sort of like suggestions that over time actually kind of reveal a new power within you to kind of really help and impact a lot of people, to be more effective, to kind of focus a bit more on value a little bit than just kind of like how you're feeling about a situation. So I kind of like how it sort of takes maybe the stakes down a little bit, and it kind of allows you to sort of just focus on some of the things that you can do a little bit every day to sort of like incrementally improve.